Hi everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel RatherBeReading, and today I'm bringing to you my May wrap-up. May was a pretty good reading month. As always, we will start off with my statistics for the month. So I read a total of 23 books in the month of May, which is pretty good. I read 17 novels, 3 novellas, 1 novella bind-up, and 2 graphic novels. I read 13 books in physical copy, I read 5 ebooks, and I listened to 5 audiobooks. Excluding the audiobooks, I read 13 books that I owned and 5 from the library. I read a total of 7,261 pages in the month of May, which averaged out to a total of 234 pages per day. Very happy with that number. The shortest book that I read was 36 pages. That was one of the novellas. It was a very short novella. The longest book that I read was 624 pages. The highest star rating that I gave 4 books, 5 stars in the month of May. 2 of those were rereads, but still, that is very good. However, my lowest star rating was a 1. And I think there was another book that I gave 2 stars. I gave another book like a 2.5. So there were a couple of low ratings in there as well. So it was a bit up and down. But my average star rating for the month was 3.63 stars, which is not too bad. So we will jump in now and talk about the books. As always, I did film a mid-month wrap-up in which I talked about the first 11 books that I read. So we will just be talking about in a bit more detail the 12 books that I read from the 16th through the 31st of May in this video. So let's talk about all of those books. So the first book that I read in the second half of May is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I loved this. This gets a lot of praise on BookTube. It gets a lot of hype. I think it lives up to the hype. The main complaint I've seen of this by people who don't enjoy this is that it's a bit slow at the start and it takes a while to kind of get into the heist aspect that is the main aspect of the plot. I didn't mind that at all. I loved getting introduced slowly to all of the characters and getting like bits of their backstory and really getting to fall in love with the characters and then moving into this kind of more action-packed part of the plot. I loved all of the characters. I thought it was action-packed when it needed to be. I just thought this was great. I gave this 5 stars. I then moved on and read an audiobook, Second Star to the Right by Mary Alice Monroe. I listened to this on audio and it was narrated by the author, Mary Alice Monroe. This is a novel about a family who move into a home in England. They're American and they move into this house in England that has been converted into like flats, like on each of the 3 levels is a flat, and the owner of the home, who's an elderly lady, still lives on the top floor, and she believes herself to be Wendy from Peter Pan, like Peter Pan's Wendy, and it all just kind of goes from there. This was just like really just a bit meh for me. It had a good sense of whimsy, but I didn't connect to the main character or like any of the characters. I thought it was very predictable. I just didn't care. I was going to give it a 2.5, but I did get a little bit emotional towards the end of it. So I bumped it up by 0.25. So in the end, I gave that one 2.75 stars. Next, I read Throwaway by Heather Huffman. This is one of my backlist Kindle books that I've been trying to get through. This is a novel about a woman who was in foster care growing up, and then when she left foster care when she was 18, she fell into being a sex worker, and she's been a sex worker for years. I think she's in her early 30s when the story is set, and her pimp basically is under investigation by the police, and she ends up forming a relationship with the police officer who's investigating her pimp. I didn't really like this book. I thought it was I didn't really like it. The writing was okay for the most part. It was just, the story was one of those stories that had a lot of coincidences in it that you're just like, well, that's very convenient. And the character not putting things together that seemed so obvious to the reader. So in the end, I was going to give this something like a 2-star, but I did really appreciate what the author was trying to do. I read her author's note and I really appreciated what she was trying to do about bringing awareness to the issues with the foster care system and how quite often there is no kind of transition. there's no help from the government in when a child leaves foster care and going out into the world when they have no support system, and what the type of lifestyle that can lead to. So I really appreciated all of that was in there. So in the end, I gave that a 2.5 star rating. I then read Text Me When You Get Home by Kayleen Schaefer. This is another one that I listened to on audio and is narrated by Lauren Fortgang. This is a non-fiction book that is all about the modern female friendship. I should actually look it up for you guys because it does have a subtitle, which I didn't think to look up before I started filming, so I'll get that up while I'm talking about it. But I personally really enjoyed this. Some of the reviews talk about it being condescending. I personally didn't find it condescending. I thought that the author was really trying to shine a light on how women are raised in a way that is, sometimes if you're not interested in what things are typically considered to be girly, then you don't always realize that there are other girls out there interested in those types of things, and then it can be very eye-opening when you meet someone who's interested in the same types of things. It also just talked a lot about the portrayal of female friendships in media and about how important friendships are in your life. I just found the whole thing very interesting. So the full title is Text Me When You Get Home, The Evolution and Triumph of Modern Female Friendship. I said, I personally really enjoyed this. I understand that obviously it's not for everyone because a lot of people, like I said, found the tone of it condescending. I didn't. I really enjoyed it, and in the end, I gave that 4 stars. Next, I read Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. I really loved this. I think I loved this even a little bit more than the first book. I loved, again, all of the characters. I loved all the action-packed plot that's going on in this. I'm a big fan of the Grisha trilogy, and I really loved getting to see all of those Grisha characters, the ones that like kind of pop up in and out of this. I just really loved this, and again, I gave this 5 stars. I then read Sleep Like a Baby by Charlene Harris. This is the 10th book in the Aurora Teagarden series. This one was kind of just okay, definitely not my favorite in the series. It was pretty stock standard for the series. I didn't super love the mystery in this one. You get a lot of this in the whole series, but I was very aware of it in this one about just all of the little minute details that the author gives of the main character's day-to-day life. Like, you just get a lot of, I woke up, then I had breakfast, then I cleaned this, then I sat down to read a book, then I made dinner. Like, you get a lot of that type of stuff, which can bog the story down a little bit. And when I'm really enjoying the mystery, I don't notice it as much, but because of the mystery wasn't as strong in this one, I didn't super love this one, but it was still enjoyable, and in the end, I gave that one 3 stars. Next on audio, I listened to Little and Lion by Brandy Colbert. This one is narrated on audio by Alicia Wainwright. This one, it's kind of, my feelings on this one were a little bit mixed. So this is a YA contemporary about a girl who has been at boarding school for the last year, while her family are dealing with her stepbrother who has recently been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And so she has just returned from a year in boarding school, and her brother both start to have romantic feelings for the same girl. I really loved the diversity in it. So you've got the main character, Suzette, who is black. She has dreadlocks and a septum piercing. Her and her mother are black, and they're part of a mixed race blended family. So there's her stepdad and her stepbrother who are white. They are also Jewish. You have her brother who has bipolar disorder. There are several lesbian side characters. There's a pansexual side character. There is a side character with a hearing disability. You've also got the main character who is dealing with her sexuality and trying to decide where she falls on the sexuality spectrum, because she has discovered that she is attracted to both boys and girls. A lot of diversity. Loved that. The only issue with that is I feel like there was so much in the story that it kind of got a little bit messy, and I feel like the author couldn't maybe give as much attention to all of the stuff that she was trying to as what maybe was needed. I did think there was a lot of interesting commentary in it on how difficult it can be to, when you have a loved one or a close friend or something like that with a mental illness, how hard it can be to have a trusting relationship with them and have them trust you, but also sometimes do what's best for them in terms of their mental illness, and how sometimes those two things, the trust and doing what's best for them, aren't always going to line up with each other, and the struggle with things like that. So I did think it had some really interesting stuff in there. It just did get a little bit messy in parts, but I did still enjoy it, and in the end I gave that a 3.5 star rating. I then read Refuge for Masterminds by Kathleen Baldwin. This is the third book in the Strange House series, trilogy, I guess. I would imagine that this was originally supposed to be 5 books because it is a companion series where each book follows a different girl. And we only get 3 books following 3 of the girls, and I imagine there were going to be 2 more, but that maybe it didn't get picked up by the publisher. I'm not sure what went on. So the overall kind of plot isn't super wrapped up, but I'm not hugely bothered because it hasn't been like my favorite series. I've enjoyed it, but it hasn't been like too amazing. This one was pretty much just like the others. It was just okay. The main thing that maybe annoyed me a little bit with this one was that at the end of the second book, we got kind of the hook for this book of what was going to be like maybe the mystery of this book. That was literally resolved in like the first chapter of this book. We get like a, this isn't a spoiler, but at the end of the second book, you kind of discover that maybe there's a spy amongst the group and trying to figure out, and I thought, oh, the whole next book's going to be about figuring out who this spy amongst them is, and that's going to be really interesting. They find out who the spy is in the first chapter of this book, so I really felt like a little bit let down by that part of the storyline, but it was enjoyable. It wasn't anything amazing, but it was enjoyable. In the end, I gave that a 3.25 stars. Next, I read The Language of Thorns by Leigh Bardugo. I loved this. So this is a collection of novellas that are set in the Grisha world. So they don't follow any of the characters. You could read this totally separate from the Grisha trilogy or the Six of Crows duology. This is basically, I think the concept of it is that it's supposed to be fairy tales or like folklore type of things that people maybe in the Grisha world would have had growing up. I really enjoyed all of the stories in here. It's probably my favorite novella collection I've ever read. So I will give you my individual ratings for the story. So we have Ayama and the Thornwood. I gave that one a 4.25 star rating. The Too Clever Fox, I gave 4.5 stars. The Witch of Duva, I gave 4.5 stars. Little Knife, I gave, what did I give that one? 3.75 stars. I gave The Soldier Prince a 4 star, and I gave When Water Sang Fire, the last one, 4.5 stars. So I gave 3 of these 4.5 stars. The 3.75 was the lowest rating that I gave, and so that's not even a low rating. Like, I still really enjoyed that story. I really loved how the illustrations work in this, that you have at the start of the story, you'll get just like a little picture, and then as the story progresses, the picture gets bigger and more intricate until you kind of get towards the end of the story when you have it bordering the whole page, and then at the very end of the story, you get a full page illustration, which I won't show you because I think maybe they can be considered spoilers. I loved the artwork. The full page spread that you get for the last story in this, I literally would have as a print on my wall. I love that illustration. Like, I might even look into whether that's something that you can buy because I really, really love it. So I highly recommend this. It was a really, really enjoyable novella collection. And so my overall rating averaged out to a 4.25. Very, very enjoyable. I then read The Wrong Sister by T.E. Woods. This is a book that I received from NetGalley, so thank you to NetGalley and the publishers. This is an adult thriller that follows a woman named Tess who is driving on the street one day, and she sees a woman walking down the street who looks exactly like her. Like, they could literally be twins. At the very start of the story, Tess is being interviewed by the police. You know that someone has died. You don't know who it is, how they died, anything like that. And then obviously, like I said, you go back and you have Tess seeing this woman and the story kind of moving on from there of Tess and this woman trying to figure out what the heck's going on. This was okay. It was enjoyable. I thought the writing was good. I really enjoyed the ride that the story kind of took you on. There was no real surprising moments or big like punch moments that you kind of want from a thriller. I didn't super love the ending, but it was enjoyable. It wasn't badly written. I've had a lot of the thrillers that I've read recently from NetGalley have been really like big letdowns, but this one was okay. I enjoyed it. So in the end, I gave that a 3.5 star rating. I then listened on audio to America's First Daughter by Stephanie Dray and Laura Kamui. This, again, I listened to it on audio. It was narrated by Cassandra Campbell. I will say that I really enjoyed Cassandra Campbell's narration. I really enjoyed it. I thought she did really well from an Australian's perspective of the southern accents. And a couple of points you get a northern accent, like a Yankee accent, and I could really hear the difference and stuff in that. I thought she just did a really good job. So this is a historical fiction that follows Martha Patsy Jefferson, who is the daughter of Thomas Jefferson. You get the story. This is the 600+ page book that I read for the month. So this story follows Patsy through her whole, not her whole life, but from when she's a young child, kind of at the time of the death of her mother, all the way up into like her later years. So you get it from when her father is, before he even goes over to France to be like the French minister or whatever it is, the US ambassador to France or whatever it is that he goes over to there to be, I can't remember what it is, and he becomes president, and so governor and then president and all those types of things. I enjoyed this. It's one of those stories that as it went on and then it finished, I realized kind of how much I enjoyed it. I thought it had a lot of interesting commentary in it on women and how hard it was for women in this time, about how little choice you had about who you married, and about how families often didn't want girls because not only were sons able to carry on the family name, but they were also stronger and able to help on farms and things like that, but also girls were another mouth to feed and another daughter that you'd have to dowry in order to marry them off. So, and that if you ended up in a marriage, if you're married off as a woman and you end up married to a man who's not very nice, is abusive, any of those types of things, that you're just kind of stuck. There's nothing that you can do for the most part. There was a lot of it in that. It does talk about slavery a lot and the kind of hypocrisies of the time period. Thomas Jefferson obviously famously penned the Declaration of Independence and talked about freedom for all men while keeping and owning slaves. He also had it has been evidenced by DNA evidence, I understand now, that he had a relationship with one of his slaves who was in fact his late wife's half-sister. He had several children with her, but she was a slave that he owned. So it does talk about all of that type of thing as well. I just thought it dealt with a lot of interesting issues. I also really loved the author's note in this at the end, where the authors were very clear in what was fact, what was fiction, and also in the things that are kind of more fictionalized, how they drew a line, like how they came up with that idea, and even though it's technically fictional, that they pulled the idea of it from stuff in history. I thought the author's note was really great. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. If you are interested in kind of the Revolution era America, then I would definitely recommend picking this up because I thought it was a pretty interesting read. The last and final book that I read in the month of May was A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. Both this book and Language of Thorns are spoilers for my May book haul. I purchased these this month, but I read them straight away because they are continuations of series that I've already read. So this is the novella that is set after the ACOTAR trilogy and follows the events of the last book, A Court of Wings and Ruin. A Court of Wings and Ruin. I enjoyed this. Is it necessary? No. I did think that it was interesting to kind of see how, like, what's happening in this world following the events of ACOWAR. I still don't think that was technically necessary though, because I think you could have got that in the next books that are being published, but I do think it was nice as like a little bridge between the series. I've heard a lot of people talking about how Sarah J. Maas just wrote this as an excuse to just write smut set in this series. I don't really understand that because there is literally one sex scene in this. I will say this is not a young adult series. This is a new adult series. The main character in this turns 21 or 22. I can't remember exactly what it is. She's in her early 20s. She's not a teenager. This is heavy on, not this in particular, but the series is heavy on explicit sex scenes. It is not appropriate for all teenagers. It's not young adult, it's new adult. But I don't think she wrote this. This has one sex scene in it. It wasn't all smut. I will say that sometimes Sarah J. Maas falls into the trap of having the main male character always kind of, quite often, because you get a lot of his inner monologue at different points and then talking down the bond. There's a lot of like sexual banter and innuendo at all times. So I can understand how that sometimes can be annoying, but it doesn't really bother me. And I understand that maybe it bothers other people, but I don't think it's correct to call this a smut book because it's not. There's one sex scene in this towards the end and that's it. So I did enjoy this. I don't think it was necessary, but like whatever, but I enjoyed it because I enjoy the series and I enjoy the characters. In the end, I gave this 3.5 stars. So that was it. That was all of the books that I read in the month of May. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you have read any of the books that I read, if you've got the same or differing thoughts from me, or any books that you read in May that you really, really loved. My favorite books of May was definitely the Six of Crows duology. I really, really loved that duology. Apologies if I went through these books really quickly. It is rapidly, I don't think you can tell on camera, but we're rapidly losing the lights. I wanted to get this filmed because I want to get this uploaded as soon as possible for you guys. So yeah, I would love to chat in the comments down below. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. But that is all I have for this video today. Bye guys.